Well, this was not supposed to become one of our playlists, but it looks like this is going to become a set of videos. He thought that everything was good. He was just going to clean up and have Clinton do the exhaust, which looks really, really good because Clinton does amazing work. However, there's a puddle that keeps showing up under here, and when we had the car up, it became quite obvious that it's a heater core. And anyone who knows anything about second and third gen Camaros, and even first gens, knows that getting at all the hoses, all the bolts on a heater core is a nightmare. So we're going to have to decide if this fender actually has to come off or not. Sometimes you can pop the inner out and get at them, because there's bolts and stuff right behind here that you cannot, under any circumstances, get from the engine bay. So it looks like there is a really good chance that this is a new playlist on How Peculiar. So let's see where this winds up. There's no point in trying to put it back on the road though with the heater core leaking. I know he talked about just bypassing it, but in fact you can see, you know, that's definitely coolant, and it's, I know it looks like it's under there, but it's because it's weeping. But you see it at the pinch weld here when it's up in the air. The only place I can come from is the heater core, and it's a nightmare job on these cars, but it's got to be done. Okay, for anyone who doubts the veracity of what I'm saying, look at how tight it is in here. Now, this is a 6.6 liter, as you can see, which is the 400. It is an air conditioning car, and getting it, everything holding that in is a nightmare. So this whole inner fender is going to have to come out. And of course you can see she's painted. Everything's glossy, everything's nice. And we all know how much we love working on painted cars. Makes us nervous. So we will do what we can here. But yeah, this car, it's a nice car. It's in really good shape, but that heater core is a real problem. Now, as part of the intro, this is a 1979 Trans Am 6.6. It is a 4-speed car. It does have air conditioning. This is what, 200 and some horsepower, probably 300-ish, 325-ish foot-pounds. I'd have to look that up. It's been a little while. It's got the snowflakes, the gold accent. It is a Trans Am. It has a screaming chicken. You know, it's a pretty desirable car overall. The only problems I know about this car, the exhaust is laying on the ground. At least one manifold stud is busted. So at some point we're going to have to deal with that, which is not fun on Pontiac motors. And heater core leak. So that's kind of where we're at. Other than that, it's a great car. It's in really, really, really good shape, especially in Minnesota. I mean, look how beautiful everything is. So, yeah, just not looking forward to pulling this interior apart, but we don't really have a lot of options. I couldn't live with myself if we just left it that way. Alright, we've talked a little bit, and we're going to learn a little more before we go just yanking this apart. But it looks like passenger seat, glove box, probably center console, just so we can start pulling all the air ducting down there. I know at least the inner has to come out to get at them. I mean, you can see where that hose goes. I mean, the upper hose, you can at least see. The other one is way down there. So we're going to have to work out a process here, because once again, painted car, and we all know how much we love monkeying on painted cars. So we'll talk about it. We got time this winter, but before spring, this heater core is getting done, and this will become a series. So I think tonight his big interest is trying to get that hung so the car's at least movable. Okay, so as some more of the introduction to this car, you can see 4-speed, and of course, you know, Got that little funky adapter thing, the little ratio adapter. And a very nicely painted drive shaft for no reason. But yeah, very, very clean under there. It's nice to see stuff like that in Minnesota because you generally don't. Most things are pretty rusty around here. Alright, so for tonight, the goal is to get those up here. We're going to do a little more learning just to see how little we can get away with before we do the heater core. That, and he doesn't actually have one in stock, so these cars are never fun to take apart. Just because he's trying really hard to keep the car as close to stock as possible, you can see this allows it to heat up. It takes, now here, I'll open her back up so you can see she's real slow to open the dash pot here. But closing her takes about 10 inches for Mercury. So we open her up and you can see she's slowly opening, although exhaust velocity would help finish opening that. So yeah, we're actually going to put that back in. Okay, after a little Marvel's Mystery Oil up on the interface there, you'll see she closes real nice at around 7. And now opens up right quick. So it was just a little sticky right in there from the sandblasting. So now she's really good. The diaphragm's nice and strong. Slowly working out where everything goes. But we're going to leave the plastic on until the last minute, and then we're going to forget, and he's going to start the car and melt it on there permanently. Like Mel's car. Yeah, like on Mel's car. But no, it just makes it easier while we're working. It's just plastic that Clinton puts on it. We can cut it off. But it keeps us from scraping things up. You pay a lot of money to ceramic coat things, you might as well leave it on there as long as you can. So we'll get the next one strung in there. Now the joy of trying to remember which intermediate pipe is which. We finally figured out which muffler was which. So we've got that kind of started. We've got that hanger kind of started, because when it's all done, you really don't want this ever buzzing against the sheet metal. So you just put everything up loosely, a little here, a little here, a little here. And then once you got her all situated, then you can do your final tighten. All right, now we've got her kind of mocked in. And just kind of wiggle, 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 tighten, tighten, tighten until it's sitting the way we want it. And John even put a little whoop-dee here, because you know how these are. They're always rubbing. But yeah, we'll see just how nice this is going to tuck in. But you know, you just gotta rotate and play with it until it all works. And that is our clearance here. We've got that all up. These fancy little ball sockets are holding. And of course it'll be a couple tightening cycles. You know how that goes. But yeah. So we got the driver's side on. I would have liked to seen one more hanger. But you know, it is what it is. It's not uncommon. Right. So now we have shiny, shiny new exhaust under here. So that should hold up a little better, because once again, Minnesota. So hopefully the tips come out looking good. They don't rattle. So this should be pretty nice. We will see. These bolts will need tightened a dozen times, because that's the reality of exhaust. But yeah, pretty happy with how that looks. That came out really, really nice. Wasn't as complicated to put in as some people tried to make it sound. So there. Looks like Clinton did a good job powder coating, and I guess John did an okay job bending stuff. So, alright. Okay, we've just been discussing next steps on this. It's really hard to decide whether you want to modify a car that's so original or not. It runs good, it sounds pretty good, has a minor exhaust leak we got to deal with, and that heater core issue, which is not going to be fun. But other than that, it just runs and drives great. So it's a hard decision on whether this 400 needs to have a lot of power or not. So he's got to decide on that. That's his decision. There weren't too many of these 79s with a 4-speed and a Pontiac motor in them. You know, the bulk of them were automatic cars, which was the Oldsmobile motor. So there's not a lot of these. So it makes it hard. It's a hard decision to have to make. So, and we all know what I did with my decision. I modified the bejesus out of my car. In fact, I probably dropped the value by half. So, doesn't matter to me. Kids can deal with that. Yeah, no, this car's in really, really good shape. We're really hoping that the heater core hasn't leaked enough to do any damage to the carpet, because this factory carpet is in really nice shape. Yeah, overall, pretty happy with the car. We ran it in, you know, a couple heat cycles. Got to keep tightening headers, you know, or the exhaust. So it takes time to get that all to seal. But yeah, no, it's not a crazy car. I always love that engine turn look on the dash. You know, nice simple car. But yeah, 4-speed, that's something you don't see a lot of at the end of the 70s. And by the 80s, almost everything was an automatic, except for performance cars and super, super, super cheap economy cars. No, automatics became king. And then when the manual came back in the late 90s, early 2000s, then they were the expensive option. You know, in the beginning, automatics were very expensive. And then they just became everywhere. But, yeah, and one thing that's neat on these, that's actually a real extractor. You know, air really does actually go through it. So that's kind of neat. You know, the shaker hood, unfortunately by this point in time, you know, they don't work like you think they would. But, you know, they're still neat looking. They just don't bring cool air in anymore by this point in the build. So, all right. That's going to be the end of the first Trans Am video. This has been a ShopRex approved video. Have a great night. Thanks for watching.